Well, good afternoon, everyone. Great to be here. For those of you who are lucky enough to be in the last presentation by Vice and Mike, I just want to, right off the bat, set the record straight and say that I don't do voices. So, as Chris said, or Chris was actually probably too kind, I want to set the record straight on another front that I'm new to Tim Hortons. I've been CMO for the last year. My background is Molson Coors for the last 5 years, and before that, 18 years with Kraft Foods. And I love brands. I love brands that engage. And of all of the brands that I've worked on, Tim's stands out as extraordinarily special. And the caveat I would say right off the bat, and this is, I think, true for all brands, it's particularly true for a brand like Tim Hortons, that Tim's is a brand that's been built by a village and arguably built by a country, that we've got kind of generations of marketers over the last 50 years that have worked on the brand, cross-functional leads, and more so than anything else, we're, as many of you will know, we're a franchise model. We have almost 2,000 owners, and if there's a secret recipe of Tim's, I think it's that you've got owners that have built the brand community by community. We'll talk more about that. So I want to level set, and I'm told the audience is about 40-60, I think 60% Canadian, 40% American and elsewhere. And for the Canadians, I imagine you know Tim's as I do, but especially for our guests to Canada, I just want to give a little bit, about 3 or 4 slides, just to talk about what Tim's as a brand has become, and then talk a little bit about how that success was generated. It started in Hamilton, Ontario, with one store. We now have 3,500 stores in Canada, 800 in the U.S., and 50 overseas in the GCC out of Dubai. For Americans, we generally use in Canada kind of the 1 to 10 rule. So having 3,500 stores or restaurants in Canada is the equivalent of having 30 or 35,000 in the U.S. We have a greater than 40 share of traffic, a little bit less in dollars. We're underdeveloped in the lunch and evening dayport, but we're growing quickly. These stats are from full year 2013. We just released our full year 2014 numbers a couple of days ago, and for those of you who follow us, we had an exceptional 2014 and grew share positions across the board, particularly in the fourth quarter. We just accelerated through the year. Our core is coffee. We have a 75% share of caffeinated beverages, strength in each of the key subsegments. But we've grown far beyond coffee. We're number one in a set of categories and challenging for lunch. Both us and McDonald's have about a 20 share of lunch. We pulled ahead in the fourth quarter. You know, I could show a ton of charts around kind of brand love, brand health. The Canadians in the room will just know the incredible affinity that this brand has generated over the last 50 years. This is one, and it was actually referenced in the Google Talk an hour or so ago, that was released a couple of weeks ago by Ipsos. And I like it because it puts Tim's into a much broader context. And it's a measurement across all Canadians. And if you look, interestingly, at millennials, maybe bridging to the last couple of presentations, the YouTube presentation and Vice, if you're in the room for those, the brand is actually stronger and growing with millennials. That we're number 6, I think, in this chart. We see this in all of our own tracking research. We're literally kind of eating up market share that we're very privileged to have, and we work hard to re-earn that every day. And we'll talk more about that as I show you some examples of the work that the team has done. So with all of that really as the setup, the question, what I really want to talk about is, well, how did Tim's become so loved? And again, I've been with the company for the last year, but I've obviously spent a lot of time diagnosing that and interrogating that question, talking with folks inside and out of the company, because we want to really understand what has been so successful. And I've come to the conclusion that there are really kind of three overarching principles. The first is that, and just thinking about a lot of the presentations actually we've seen today and yesterday, these probably won't seem completely new, and in fact they're themes through a number of the great brands that have spoken. The first is being true to purpose, having a core understanding of what your brand belief is, and just reinforcing that every day. And I'll show some examples of that. The second is valuing and nurturing role in community. And if ever there was a brand that is kind of bottom-up, grassroots up, it is Tim Hortons. That as good as, and I'll show you a lot of kind of great advertising work over the years, I tell you that the secret recipe is actually all of the regional work, the community work that the owners do kind of market by market, neighborhood by neighborhood. And finally, kind of continuing to reinvent, staying true to purpose and consistent with values in the community, but keeping it fresh and continuously challenging the expected and doing things that are exciting and bold and daring and different. And I'll give you some examples of that as well. So Tim's was started by Tim Hortons. Tim was a hockey player. He played for the Toronto Maple Leafs, played for 3 other NHL teams. Good Trivial Pursuit question. He played for Buffalo, Pittsburgh, and the Rangers. And Ron Joyce was his partner, and before becoming an entrepreneur, Ron was actually a cop. And along the way, Paul House, who was a driving force in the company for decades, and actually retired just in December as our chairman, before he became a restaurateur, he was actually a peach farmer. So you had a cop, a hockey player, and a farmer, and I can't kind of imagine a more Canadian triumvirate than that. And when you think about the culture and the brand, for that matter, that is authentic and down-to-earth and hard-working, I trace a lot of that to these 3 individuals and the DNA that they really set up in the brand. And that's just perpetuated in the brand belief system. You can also see a quote that we've done a fair amount of brand archaeology over the last year or so, really just interrogating what has been so successful, what has been the purpose of Tim's. And Ron, very early on, there's a quote that he talked about what he and Tim were trying to set up, and it was a place where everyone can feel welcome, where everyone can feel at home. And when you think about a brand purpose, and I know we talk a lot about brand purpose today, here's one that has always been with Tim Hortons, and you'll see it kind of woven through everything that the brand has done over the decades. So the True Stories campaign, which was created by J. Walter Thompson, really, I think, dials into this. And again, the Canadians in the room will know this. I would argue it's probably one of the, if not the most successful Canadian ad campaigns of all time. And it tells really authentic, true stories about how individuals have interacted with the brand. Because fairly early on, that vision of creating a place where people feel welcome, in many small towns across Canada, Tim's had become the unofficial community center. And the agency and the marketing group at the time kind of dialed into that and reflected that back to Canadians. So I could spend the rest of my time showing work, but I wanted to show one that's one of the earliest true stories. It's a spot called Lillian. So let's run that.
I started school here about 1915, and most of the times I'd wait till I hear the bell going in the school, and up I would run.
She's been coming in here for years, ever since I came here to work. She's in here most every day.
Good morning, Nancy. Cold today.
I like to start my morning with one special thing, a nice cup of coffee.
And she always orders the same thing. Even if I'm not here, the girls know it's a large coffee, double cream.
I've seen it before. I don't know why she don't make her own coffee.
Well, it's quite a walk from where she lives, mostly uphill.
Well, every time I go, I usually see some of my friends. It's always great to say hi. Haven't seen you for a while. Well, gotta go now. Busy day.
I'd say Lillian's one of the family.
In this life, some things are worth the effort.
So many of the early true stories, and in fact many of the true stories, were about kind of individuals and their interactions with the brand, the daily ritual of getting coffee. And that shifted over time. Some of the more recent, at least I think the best work, began to use this notion of community and country interchangeably. And when you think about that original brand purpose that Tim Horton and Ron Joyce had, a place where everyone can feel at home, well, that's both the brand positioning and brand belief of the company and the brand. But I would suggest that it's also a little bit of the brand positioning of Canada, the country. And I think that's perhaps explains why the brand has, in many ways, has been a touchstone for nationalism and the country. I could show you a couple of spots. The one that is my favorite is from 2010, and tells the story of a father welcoming his family to Canada. Well, I'll run the film so you can see it.
I miss you. I love you. I will see you tomorrow.
Welcome to Tim Hortons. May I take your order, please?
Yes. 2 coffees, please. Cream and sugar.
Look at you.
Welcome to Canada.
What is all this?
You'll see. Welcome home.
That's great work. So you now know who the Canadians are at the table. They're the ones who are crying right now. So we continue to collect stories at everycup.ca. We have more than 19,000 stories online, which is an incredible little microsite to share kind of stories of brand love and interaction. It's also a wonderful brainstorming tool for our agency partners and our marketers to just go in and explore how the brand resonates with consumers in their daily lives. So the second overarching theme, and very much related to the purpose, is the building and nourishing of community. And as great as the advertising and communication work is, I actually think this is behind much of the brand love for the brand that's so intense, and the level of engagement. And those two things clearly kind of work together. We have 2,000 owners. They're building this brand. It's almost like kind of 2,000 brand managers that are across the network, and they've kind of taken their kind of few blocks of neighborhood or small town of neighborhood, and they're personally vested in building the brand in their community. And I think that is so incredibly unique for brands. Certainly, it's been powerful to be part of, even in my first year. And there's so many great examples of brilliant regional and local marketing that have come out of it. One of the best examples is the Timbit Sports program. And this was a program that was started by a franchisee in Nova Scotia because he wanted to sponsor his local hockey team, and he called them the Timbits. And from there, we now have 300,000 kids in Timbit Sports, kind of hockey, soccer, Little League Baseball in the U.S., but 200,000 of them in Canada, 100,000 now in the U.S. And this has been a program that's been running for generations, that you literally have many of us who were kind of played on Timbit teams, have grown up and now have our kids in Timbit Sports. So you think about the effect that has on brand affinity, that Tim's really does become part of the family. So one of the Timbits that grew up with Sidney Crosby, and I can't imagine a better brand fit for Tim Hortons, the brand, and who Sidney Crosby is in terms of authentic, down-to-earth, kind of incredible hockey player, kind of played Timbits in Cole Harbour, Nova Scotia, and has gone on for greatness. Some of the best of our work has been Sidney Crosby spots. I'll show one which was from last year. Was also J. Walter Thompson. Actually, Brent Choi, who's right in front of me, is executive creative director at J. Walter Thompson, and led this initiative, and which is, I guess, my shameless way of ensuring that you clap at the end of it. It is, I think, great work. Let's take a look.
And we want to welcome everyone from coast to coast on what promises to be a great game tonight. Well, it should be very interesting.
The northern lights are calling. The siren screams our names. The drums keep on pounding. You will know our names. Come down. And we let the world know not below. Let us ride, let us ride, let us ride.
So, every time we run that, we get an avalanche of positive social media, and it was designed to be actually social from the start, and I think is a point that's a bit of a shift for us, and I'll tell you more about what we've done over the course of the last year or so. But the spot was shot in Copps Coliseum, close to store number 1, so there was a nice kind of local story. You probably missed, and I should have kind of pre-announced it, but there are lots of little Easter eggs in there, things like the Green Men from Vancouver. Or the team, I hadn't joined at that point. It invited bloggers and social media enthusiasts in to be part of the crowd, which is a technique we've used actually a number of times since to help with the authenticity and seeding kind of stories socially. And I'll come back to that when we talk about Dark Roast over the summer of last year. An interesting time. I'll skip over this. I think another great example, though, of showing the role of Tim Hortons in the neighborhood was some work by Taxi 2. We took a suburban home in Calgary just this last September, and overnight we transformed it into a Tim Hortons, so that as our neighbors woke up the next day, one of their suburban homes looked like a Tim Hortons, and we were serving free coffee and donuts. Never went to television. It lived only online and through PR, and we've tracked over 75 million impressions to that event and occasion that happened. Say just a couple of words about the Tim Hortons Foundation, because I know a number of you, or probably many of you, are working in cause marketing and social responsibility. And I think this links really clearly to purpose, which is probably one of the learnings for it, is that it started well before cause marketing was a buzzword. It was 40 years ago that Ron Joyce started the Tim Hortons Foundation as a memorial to Tim Horton. We now have 20,000 disadvantaged youth a year going through Tim Hortons camps. Last year we raised $12 million. We've built 6 kids camps across Canada and the U.S. And I'd say that the thing that this is most powerful for is purpose and culture internally, actually. It certainly, fans and guests love it, but the role this plays for our ownership community, our 2,000 franchise owners, and employees is profound. And whenever we do engagement surveys and ask what people are proud of, they're proud of the growth, we're proud of the brand building, but they're most proud of doing the right thing in the community with the Children's Foundation and causes like that. And I think if you're able to link cause marketing to purpose and then do it not for a quarter or two, but for generations, it will have an incredibly powerful impact on your corporate culture, as it has for Tim's. So finally, engaging and delighting. And really, the way I think about this is just surprise and delight. How do we, as a marketing group and as a company, stay fresh? And I think and I spend a lot of time thinking about how do you do that without losing sight of purpose, unwavering commitment to community. So it's not kind of reinventing the idea, but expressing it in new and interesting ways. You know, I was going to talk about the role of social media and viral, but after the Google and Vice presentations, I'll skip over that slide entirely. Tell a little bit of a story about, well, in fact, we've got a case study on video, so I'll let you see that. I'll just set it up by saying that last August, we launched Dark Roast, which was a massive launch for us. First new blend for Tim's in 50 years. A lot of debate around whether we should do it and how we should do it. We had it running in 3 different test markets. And we wanted communication that really broke through and that was social from the start. So I'll run a case study video, and I think in particular, kind of look at how all of the regional marketing, PR, and communication all came together for something pretty quite magic for us.
Tim Hortons serves 8 out of every 10 cups of coffee in Canada. And until this year, we've only had 1 blend. So how did we launch Dark Roast Coffee? Our first new blend in 50 years? We conducted a dark experiment. Overnight, we blacked out an entire Tim Hortons in a little town in Quebec. And as real customers showed up for their morning fix, we invited them to come on in.
I can't see.
That was very dark.
Oh my God, bro. God, Linda, where are you?
Welcome to Tim Hortons. Just follow my voice. Walk forward.
Oh.
We took away customers' sense of sight to supercharge their sense of taste.
All right, stick your hand out.
Do I want to? That smells good.
More intense.
Yes, it's good. It's very smooth. Tastes like warm deliciousness.
Making our dark experiment the ultimate taste test.
Tim Hortons Dark Roast.
Dark roast? Is that new? What took you guys so long?
And Canadians loved it. But that was just the beginning. We used the film version of the dark experiment as content on YouTube and our other social channels. Within its first 2 weeks on YouTube, it was the most viewed video in Canada, and easily the most viewed Tim Hortons YouTube video ever. Tim's Dark became the #1 trending hashtag, earning over 156 million social media impressions. Along with the video, we launched a PR campaign, and it sparked a media firestorm.
We love the Timmies.
Tim Hortons is going to test a dark roast.
Tim Hortons rolling out a new Dark Roast.
Ultimately earning over 91 million media impressions across North America from over 350 different news outlets. But we wanted to find as many ways to help Canadians get into the dark as we could. We blacked out the facades of select Tim's locations, pop-up sampling programs. We even blacked out a transit bus and surprised commuters. Dark Roast was literally everywhere.
The Dark Roast is spirited in taste, yet composed. All hail to darkness! Tim Hortons' new Dark Roast Coffee.
The Dark Store went international at the Emmys and even as far as the United Arab Emirates. In the end, millions and millions of impressions are one thing, but results are another. In just 4 months, Tim Hortons served over 52 million cups of Dark Roast in a country of just 35 million people, making Dark Roast one of the most successful product launches in Canadian history.
So as you can see, incredible commercial success. As we reported a couple of days ago, a brilliant fourth quarter. We gained 2 share points in coffee in the fourth quarter alone, really largely because of Dark Roast. So I talked about brand purpose. One of the things that we've been doing over the last year or so, or maybe the last 6 months, is really just interrogating purpose. How do we put it kind of a sharper edge to purpose? And the insight that we're really focused on is just this notion of warmth in a cold world. That I'm a real believer that kind of being clear on who your monster who the enemy is, really helps with briefs and communication. And for us, the enemy isn't McDonald's or Starbucks, although there's certainly days where they make us very, very angry. But the enemy is this impersonal and cold world that we all have hundreds of friends on Facebook, and for many of you, probably thousands. For me, I'm probably pushing it for hundreds. But we probably don't know all of our neighbors. And that rallying, the brand rallying against the impersonal nature of the world and bringing people together, bringing communities together, is the point of view that Tim's has always had and will continue to have. Some of the most recent work coming out of that work started actually not with a YouTube video or a television ad. It started with brand design. This is, I think, a great piece of brand design done by our partners Pigeon Design. So as you think about warmth in a cold world, I think the articulation of a paper cup dressed up for the holidays, this is just 2 months ago in December, dressed up in a warm holiday sweater is just such a brilliant articulation of that. And the social and PR teams, you'll see #WarmWishes built on that idea. And every time one of our guests saw an act of holiday kindness, if they used the hashtag, we'd donate a toque. A toque, for those of you who are in America, is a wool cap. A toque to a disadvantaged youth through the Children's Foundation. And the regional marketing group took that a step further to yarn bomb one of the sampling trucks as a PR stunt. I actually, until I'd seen this, didn't know what yarn bombing was, and that kind of happened sequentially. The kind of design was done first, then the PR team and social team built on it, and that was actually all done in the kind of mid-November or so when our social agency, Ogilvy One, turned it into a story and said, well, why don't we yarn bomb a restaurant? And of course, the place to yarn bomb a restaurant is the coldest town in North America, Fort Frances. So let's take a look.
Bundle up, Fort Frances. It's going to be another chilly one today in CFOE Sports, your Fort Frances Lakers.
Dad, out there!
Oh, my loved ones, through frozen forests, hold my hand. All together, warm in winter, hand in hand.
That's pretty cool.
Oh, there's coaches and everything. Looks pretty cool, hey?
You're a part of the family band. Nothing you could do could ever change that. Oh, my loved one, frozen forest, hold my hand. All together, warm in
So that lived on YouTube and in Facebook Native. We got well over 1 million views, I think, in the first 24 hours on YouTube, and 3 million views, 3 or 3.5 million views on Facebook Native. We hadn't intended actually to ever go to television, but decided to run it once on the Super Bowl last month, and it was amazing to see the kind of tweets come in as we ran that and a roll-up spot. First time we'd ever kind of leaned into to the Super Bowl. And I think my favorite tweet was somebody who wrote that kind of only in Canada is the best Super Bowl ad about knitting. So, I just want to touch quickly on Roll Up. I could talk for a half hour just about Roll Up. That is, I think, quite an iconic promotion. It has been run for 29 years. So I think it's like has been iconic in the last 5 or 10 years, but credit to all of the marketers who didn't get tired with the idea in the first decades and found a way to have kind of promotion that have that as part of the marketing mix, but do it in a really smart way. We continue to reinvent it. This year's organizing idea was 48 million prizes in a country of 30 million people, so everyone can win. I don't know another lottery or promotion anywhere in the world that has more prizes than the population. And the content idea from that was, well, let's go to a small town and have everybody win. And then the build on that was, well, why don't we change the name of the town? So with a little bit of help from the mayor, and we actually had to bring the fire chief into it too. Apparently you can't paint a fire truck without telling the fire chief. We did this video, which went on online a couple of weeks ago.
Before Roll Up the Rim to Win starts, we wanted to bring the excitement of winning to Windsor, Nova Scotia.
Welcome everyone present to Windsor, Nova Scotia.
So 3 themes: building purpose or building community, staying true to purpose, and connecting those two, kind of linking communities with purpose, and continuing to surprise and delight. I've got one last piece of film, and this you probably will recognize a 30-second television spot. This is a slightly longer edit that has only been seen by Tim Hortons employees before. We showed it at our global convention last July, and I thought that it was a nice way to end because it reminds us of just how this incredible brand has been built community by community by community. Let's take a look.
Man, I've been to a lot of places over these past 50 years. Seen the whole true north strong and free. 'Cause I've been everywhere, man. I've been everywhere. I've been to Cooksville, Stouffville, Baynesville, Bowmanville, Bonnyville, Unionville, Oakville, Dunville, Brockville, Boucherville, Melville, Drummondville, Kentville, Grenville, Morinville, Maryville, Parksville, Stephenville, Sackville, Spring Hill, Westville, Walkerville, hanging on a windowsill. Hey! He said, wow, that's a lot of places. I said, hang on, there's more. I've been to Moncton, Picton, Shannon, Vernon, Stellarton, Hamilton, Nipigon, Nobleton, Yorkton, Brighton, Bolton, Beaverton, Brandon, Edmonton, Walkerton, Wyerton, Granby, Miramichi, Charlottetown, Burnaby, Yellowknife, Whitehorse, Corner Brook, Nunavut. I've been everywhere, man. I've been everywhere, man. I crossed the prairies bare, man. I breathed the mountain air. I've traveled, I've done my share, man. I've been everywhere, man. Check it out. Ottawa, Wawa, Mattawa, Chippewa, Moose Jaw, Oshawa.